This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
Welcome, everyone, to the G-Note Podcast. I am your host, Jason Spicy G. Goldman, and I'm a Grammy-winning record producer, arranger, and musician. I've been a music professor at USC for over 22 years, and I am most known for writing and producing music for the iconic crooner Michael Bublé over the past 2 decades. This is a podcast for musicians who want advice and strategies on navigating the music industry. If you're not a musician but a music fan, I promise there is plenty in here for you as well. On this pod, we talk all things music. On today's pod, we are talking about the frustration that musicians typically go through throughout their career, and I'm going to give you some solutions to help you out. Let's go. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Today, I want to dig in on a topic that affects not just musicians, but obviously we're going to focus specifically on musicians. But this is all musicians. And I have to say that this is one of the most challenging parts of being a musician or an artist. Today, I'll be talking about 2 different types of frustration that affects musicians. And I'll be giving you ideas and tips on how you can minimize this and things that help me. Of course, every person is different in the way that they see things and deal with things and internalize, but hopefully this will help you. I like to break this down into 2 different types of frustration. One is artistic frustration and one is career frustration. So artistic frustration would be like you're frustrated with getting better or getting to the next level. You feel like you're stagnant and you can't seem to artistically get there. You're feeling like you're not as good as others and you're constantly comparing yourself to what others are doing in terms of their actual artistry. And you feel that distractions are prohibiting your growth as an artist. The second type, as I mentioned, is career frustration, which is that you feel that you're not able to move the needle with what you're trying to do and, in the general public. You have trouble raising money for projects or how to get someone to notice anything you're doing or having a hard time just in general finding opportunities to grow. Now, I can say this. I've been in this business for a long time and I still go through this all the time. Music is always a grind. Even when you have success, it's still a grind. Even the highest level musicians are constantly reevaluating their playing, producing, etc. on a daily basis, and most times feel like they're not where they need or should be. And by the way, that's what also makes them so good. The constant reevaluation, the constant striving to get to that highest level. So let's start with discussing this idea that I mentioned about artistic frustration. This is the type of frustration of trying to get better and get to the next level. Whether we are talking about, playing an instrument or producing music or recording music or managing music, this will affect you. It's the fear of being stagnant. A lot of the frustration comes from the amount of pressure that we are putting on ourselves to be better. We're hearing or seeing others around us playing at a higher level, and we think, why should I keep going if that person is so much better than me? Or, the feeling that you're never going to attain that level. Just remember, everyone blossoms or comes into their own at a different point in their career. Some when they're 18 years old, some when they're 40 years old, or even older. So we should certainly try and keep that in mind. I know it's hard as we all want to get better as quickly as possible, but oftentimes it happens when it's meant to happen, to be honest with you. Of course, we can try and expedite the process by practicing more, but sometimes you may not be in the right frame of mind. Sometimes it's just not going to happen at that time when you want it to happen. That's kind of the beauty of it. In order to try and ease some of this types of frustration, I recommend the following, as these seem to help me a lot. Instead of sitting in a room practicing or sitting at my computer, producing music, I try and take a step back and I go back to my favorite albums or favorite artists. And we all have them. And what I try to do is I just try to get in a space and just listen. And that could be me doing yard work or, and listening, or it could be me juggling a soccer ball and just listening. But the key here is don't analyze the music or the production or the chord progression or the depth of the lyrics or the groove. Just listen and enjoy the music as best you can. You may have to do this for a few days before you stop analyzing, because I know it's hard as a musician to stop finding detail in the music. But after a few days, hopefully you're just, you're trying to zone out, and hopefully it will help you relax a little bit. If listening to music gets you even more frustrated, as it can sometimes, go do something completely unrelated to music. I always ask my students, what they like to do for fun, and many of them, to be honest, never have an actual answer. I know that sounds weird. And I tell them that's not really healthy. I'm always like, well, what do you do for fun? They're always like, well, I play music or I'll go to a show. I'm like, yeah, but what do you do that's not music related? Remember, folks, music is not life. It's part of life. And what will make your music and artistry actually better and more informed will be the experiences you have away from music. Go take a hike, go to a movie, play a video game or a board game, travel. By the way, going on social media should not be thought of as relaxing. So I recommend you not do that, as that you can get even more frustrated by going on there, seeing successes, which we're going to talk about in a bit. So don't sit there and scroll out endlessly through TikTok and Instagram. Remind yourself that being the best doesn't always mean that you get to work the most. There are plenty of musicians and producers and managers and booking agents that work a ton, even though they may not be at the top of the game. And we have spoken about this several times on this pod. If you're struggling with getting to the next level in your craft, focus on some non-skill level things like career building. So shifting the focus rather than, if you're frustrated with your playing or you're producing, maybe you just be like, okay, I'm going to work on something totally unrelated, which is, maybe you just getting caught up with some reading that you've been wanting to do on some sports or a novel. Something, again, that's not necessarily, your career, with your career in mind. The goal is to try and shift the focus away from your skill-based activities. Think of it like restarting your computer. Just so everyone knows, you should be restarting your computer once a week to let it clear out what's called the cache and reorganize files. But oftentimes we forget, causing a lot of backup and disorganization internally in the computer. So what I'm telling you now is a similar thing. It's like we have to remember to do that, clear our mind a little bit, and then we can sometimes get back in and see things a lot clearer and get better quicker. Remember, being an artist is not as simple as reading a textbook and boom, you know it, or watching a YouTube tutorial video and guess what? You know what's going on now. It's a lifetime of creating and learning. So try and be patient and breathe a bit.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Let's get into this second type of frustration, which comes from career struggles. This frustration is caused by feeling like your career is stagnant and not moving forward, which is definitely different than the skill-based frustrations. On social media, it seems like everyone else is moving forward, but you're not for some reason. Just remember, those things you see on social media are just things that people want you to see. You're seeing all the successes, right? We talked about this before. You're not seeing the struggles. Rightfully so, right? No one wants to show you the struggles, really, but that's what I'm here to help you see. People are always proud to show their awards and triumphs, but you don't see many people putting up how they failed 1,000 times or 100 times before getting to that one success. And I know that's hard to keep that into perspective sometimes, folks, but it is important. And, man, it can really bring you down sometimes seeing people have success. I know that sounds shallow and shitty, but it's the truth. And it's human. You want to have success like everyone else is having success. So if everyone's having success, what appears to be success, and you're not, you're like, man, why are they having so much success and I'm not? So it's not that you are hating on someone for having success. You feel let down, I guess. At least, that's what happens to me sometimes. I'm sure many of you can relate to this. I really, I talk to lots of people about this, and everyone seems to relate the same. Of course, we all, again, want people to succeed and be happy, but sometimes it feels like those people are always happy. And for some reason, we just keep missing the boat, or somehow getting passed over. And look, the fact is that there are some super lucky people in the industry. There's no doubt about it. They barely did much work or have a ton of talent, but they happen to be at the right place and at the right time, and bam, they get something huge that you've been working your entire career for and still don't have. But you know what? That's how it works. Sometimes people are just lucky. But the vast majority of times, I would say it's hard work and dedication that's getting people to have success. There are also those people that are kind of talented and manage to get success because they're, of their financial background, or possibly their parents, or they just happen to know the right people. That's part of it also. Guys, it's all part of it. But you can't fall into the trap of saying it's unfair. I always say this to my kids all the time. They're like, well, that's unfair. And, of course, the saying, like, life's unfair. But you just have to, grind harder, and you use all of your might and will to make what you want happen. One way to ease this frustration is to focus on the things you can control. I find that making a list is incredibly helpful and relieves a ton of stress from myself. When I create a list, in essence, tasks, I can check them off when I do them. And I got to tell you, folks, it feels so good to cross something off a list. I mean, I know that sounds a little strange, but man, when I cross something off, I'm like, yes, accomplishment. Something's been accomplished. I'm moving forward. It makes you feel like you're getting things done. Create a daily task list, or weekly, or even monthly, and objectives and goals, and see if you can meet a lot of those. I can tell you my computer is riddled with those sticky notes all over it. Make the list manageable. You don't have to get crazy, but make it manageable. Here's a quick personal example. So I've always wanted to get my music into the film and TV world. Every year I say I'm going to put in the effort to meet music supervisors, and something always comes up. Side note, music supervisors are the people that will help get your music into film and TV. They're like the direct people. They work closely with the director, and they are the ones that literally will put the music into the film. So if you can get to those people, you can get your music into film and TV. So this year I started a new group. If you followed me on my website or any of my socials, called the Fridays. And I co-lead this group with a killer vocalist named Sarah Nimitz. And we we did a lot of things in the beginning. It's a fairly new band, and we spent some money on promo for songs, blah, blah, blah. And we just found that, well, it's not really working so well in the traditional sense. Maybe we should do something else. So what we decided to do is let's create just a simple goal each month. We're going to release one song a month for 12 months. Just one song. And then the other goal was that we are going to contact 2 music supervisors a month, right? We're going to look up music supervisors on shows, and we're going to just reach out and try to contact them. That was it, those 2 goals. We wanted to make sure the tasks were doable because both of us are insanely busy. So something as simple as this has already helped us, though. It's a small task. I mean, creating the song once a month is a bit of work, but it's a small task in general. But a ton comes out of it, and there's been a lot of relief just in terms of like, okay, what we need to do. What do we need to do? By the end of the year, if we stick to it, we should have contacted, between the 2 of us, about 48 music supervisors. That's a lot of this is a numbers game, folks. So building relationships takes time. Remember, you want to be in this for the long haul. Another thing that keeps me moving is constantly shifting my focus. I may be focusing on social media and growing an audience. And when I start getting too frustrated with that, I move to something like creating covers for the next singles that I have coming out. Or I shift it focusing to some video editing or reaching out to different podcasts to help to promote this podcast or my music. And then perhaps I'll shift back to the audience thing again. I like to always be moving forward, and I don't want to be stagnant. And if I feel, that's why people say they get into writer's block. Like, I never feel like I get to that. Like, yes, I'll get stuck at a point, but then I immediately shift to something else so that I can continue to move forward. Finally, and I said this earlier, social media can be the absolute worst. We all know this. Studies have come out and said it's terrible for you, especially your kids, if you have them. Try to really manage your time on these apps, as they can be literally just god-awful for your health and cause more frustration than anything. They are a necessary evil, so I'm not saying don't use them because you need to use them. But you have to manage them properly, and you have to manage the usage of them, or it can really depress you. In closing, I'd like to say that we all know it's not easy to get over these things. I know I'm saying these things like, these are what you need to do, and all of a sudden you'll be better. But I know it's very challenging. And many times you're not going to get over them, right away or even ever. But really, it's about managing them. Like it or not, it's part of an artist and a musician's career, and something that we all have to deal with. Folks, that's all the time we have for today's episode. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this pod so you can stay up to date with new shows, giveaways, and more importantly, the concerts. You got to come out and see the big band. I promise you're going to like us. We have a lot of fun playing. We're usually at Vibrato every 2-3 months, a jazz club here in Los Angeles. If you can, come check it out. You can also follow me on Instagram at SpicyGMusic, or check out my website, jasongoldmanmusic.com, to see what projects I'm currently working on and to see when I'll be performing next. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Much love. Peace.
It's NFL draft season, and that means it's time to start thinking about fantasy football. FantasyPoints.com features industry-leading experts and prognosticators using proprietary hand-charted data to help you score more fantasy points. FantasyPoints.com is the place to go for whatever kind of fantasy football you play. Whether you play fantasy football, daily fantasy sports, or do a little bit of everything, Fantasy Points has the meticulously researched content to guide you to victory. And why wait for the fall? Fantasy Points also covers the new spring football league, the UFL. Join the guru, John Hansen, Scott Barrett, Joe Dolan, and other massive names in the fantasy football universe with an exclusive offer. Use code Pantheon for 15% off any Fantasy Points package, including the all-in package with access to every article, tool, and data nugget that Fantasy Points has to offer. That's fantasypoints.com and code Pantheon for 15% off at Fantasy Points. Fantasypoints.com, code Pantheon. Score more fantasy points.